sponsored by Riyadh Season. And with my UFC previews, the Monday is always about what are the big storylines for the main event and co-main event fights going in, which I still am going to look at here, but the main story in all of this is the Sphere. The venue is the story this weekend. I don't know what this is going to look like. I can't wait to see what this is going to look like. I can't even begin to picture what this is going to look like. Like, I thought the NHL did a pretty cool job with how they did all the graphics and shit going up. But this is a fight. And, like, a lot of times, what's on the big screen is the fight. But are you going to have a 8 trillion foot view of the fight that is happening while we're watching the fighters fight? It is, I actually cannot wrap my head around what I think this is going to look like coming up on Saturday. And so that is what is so intriguing to me, is that, like, the UFC has actually made very few changes to what a UFC fight looks like over the past, basically since Tough, right? Like the changes that they have made to the presentation and the look of the thing is they got rid of Face the Pain and the Gladiator dude. And they've added a couple of stats here and there. And they've changed the outfits, so no longer do you see Condom Depot on guys' shorts. Like, that's basically it. And then at UFC 100, I will make the cage gold, or something like that. Or after the pandemic, we're going to stay in the UFC Apex. And so those actually made the product worse. This is going to be one of the very, very, very few events where you can see a 1-second clip and know what event it is from. You can put on mega moments, or a random fight night card from Des Moines, Iowa, and they're going to look the exact same. But nothing about what we're going to see Saturday is going to look similar to anything we've seen from the UFC before. And that's really exciting, that they're kind of forcing their way into a little bit of innovation. So I'm really looking forward to that. Now, to the actual fights. In the main event, it's Sean O'Malley against Merab Dvalishvili for the Bantamweight Championship. O'Malley is in a weird spot, as he is the champion who has defended his title once. He has a major following, and there's still a bit of doubt as to this guy. He has a weird championship reign to follow in Aljamain Sterling, where it just, for whatever reason, we can make some assumptions, some people just did not get on the Aljamain Sterling bandwagon, including, actually, the Ultimate Fighting Championship. And so you don't get that usual championship rub where you just beat the best guy in your division, and now you are the champion. You don't get that from this because everyone was too busy shitting on Aljamain Sterling, and then when Sean O'Malley beats him, it's like, okay, well, now he's the champion, celebrate. It's like, yeah, but you were just dumping on the guy that he just beat. So why am I supposed to think that he's shit when that guy ain't shit? Like, what are we doing here? And so he gets that, and then he follows it up with a win over Marlon Vera, who, good fighter, I wouldn't want to fight him. He would beat me up very quickly. And that shouldn't be the bar, though, for a championship fighter. He didn't have a championship resume. Marlon Vera got that fight because at one point he beat Sean O'Malley. And it's great for Sean O'Malley to get that retribution, and it's great for him to get that that loss off the record, and blibbity blobbity blue. That being said, those 2 wins are not enough to convince some people that Sean O'Malley is legitimately the best bantamweight fighter in the world. If you were to look at some rankings, like the Bellator PFL guy might be able to, that might be a spot where you might be able to say, hey, no, we actually got the best 135 pounder in the world because of that dude. Now, I think Sean O'Malley is excellent, and I think this is a chance to really kind of solidify, like, no, he is this guy, because there are aspects of his game that are elite, 100%. And again, none of this is a question of Sean O'Malley's talent. It's just the perception of things. A win over Merab this weekend erases a lot of that, and I think really solidifies this is one of the best fighters in the world, and I think it really makes Sean O'Malley one of the biggest stars that this sport has. On the Merab side of things, I think it is a really, really interesting fight for him because he has spent so long as he's the best fighter in the division who's ever fought for a title. And he just beat all these guys. And then Aljamain Sterling is in this weird triangle thing with Piotr Yan. And then Sterling wins. and now he's the champion. And Merab and Sterling are best friends. So they're not fighting ever. And so you kind of like, so you have Merab who's just out here just kicking the shit out of really good fighters, but you don't really consider him for a championship opportunity. Now he's getting his opportunity. And I believe he started as the betting favorite. The odds are very, very close for this fight. If Merab wins, I don't think anyone's going to doubt that he is the best fighter in this division. And if O'Malley wins, I don't think anyone's going to doubt that he beat one of the best fighters in this division, and we need to give him his flowers. So it's a real interesting, I don't want to say legacy fight, but just in terms of perception and all of that, it's a really interesting bout. Co-main event, it is Alexa Grasso taking on Valentina Shevchenko for the women's flyweight title. Grasso, again, is fighting for respect. It's kind of a similar spot to Sean O'Malley, where she gets the win over Shevchenko, but it's just an out-of-nowhere submission. And I think a lot of people thought, oh, it's fluky. When you hear the camp talk and you watch it back, they were ready for that spin, they had prepared for it, and they took advantage of it. That's not fluke, that is preparation and talent, and she did that. And then she has a draw against Shevchenko. So her chance to really establish, like, no, I am better than this girl, it's a draw. And I went back and checked, like, okay, what were people's perceptions on it? 12 reporters had it for Grasso, 11 had it for Shevchenko. And Grasso is a 10-8 round in the fifth away, from not winning this fight at all. And from losing it, and this being kind of this trilogy this way. And so a win here fully cements her as the face of this division now. Instead of this 1A, 1B situation with Valentina, a win here really solidifies her as the new face of this division going into what is probably a new era in this division. On the Shevchenko side, this is her trying to get back on top. She is looking to regain her footing as the top women's fighter in the world. A win here, and she does that. You'll probably have a fourth because of the draw, but a win here, I think, really solidifies her as, like, once again, pound for pound, best women's fighter in the world, and we're going to continue on this reign of greatness at least for a little bit. A loss, and there's actually a fair amount of uncertainty. Shevchenko is 36 years old. She has accomplished basically everything you could do in this sport. And she has accomplished anything that is left for her to be able to do. The one thing she hasn't done is beat Amanda Nunes. That's not going to happen now. Amanda Nunes is retired. And even if you got Nunes to come out of retirement for that fight, if Shevchenko won that fight, people would be saying, okay, well, A, once, B, she was retired. Well, look, did you beat the best Amanda Nunes? So that last little carrot is gone. And so if she loses this fight, she's not getting another title shot at Alexa Grasso. This is like a pro wrestling thing where it's, oh, if you lose this bout, you can never challenge for the championship again as long as I'm champion. That's basically what this is. You're not going to get a fourth crack at someone you haven't beaten in the first 3 times. So there's that pressure on it. And then there's also, she's 36. In fight years, that's quite old. Although, again, very good shape, could kick my head off. But what does it leave for her to do? There isn't a major, like, okay, well, then she can go off and do this, as there is in some other divisions, as women's MMA in the UFC right now is in a bit of a rebuilding stage, I would say. Specifically for fighters who weigh the same or slightly different than Shevchenko. And so you don't really have like this major fight that you can do. So what's left? Do you move up to 135 pounds, try to get that one? Do you just try to get a couple money weight fights, a BMF title on the women's side and just go about it that way? What do you do? How do you handle this is, I think, a really interesting, it just leaves a really interesting situation for her coming up this weekend. If she loses this fight, it just leaves a lot of uncertainty. So it's going to be a really interesting fight week as we get ready for it. There's going to be a full preview coming up on the show on Friday. UFC Noche, presented by Riyadh Season. It makes sense to them, I guess, is coming to you from the Sphere this weekend. And there are a few fighters that are very intriguing on this card outside of the main event that features Sean O'Malley and Merab Dvalishvili, along with Alexa Grasso and Valentina Shevchenko. The first one, it's always funny, I'm like, you know what? We got some fighters outside of the co-main and the main event that you need to watch for. So in the fight, the third from the top, it feels like I'm kind of playing you a little bit, but I promise we got some deeper cuts as it goes along. But I am very intrigued by this third fight on the main card as Diego Lopez takes on Brian Ortega. Lopez is a really interesting prospect. He's won 4 in a row. He had a run of 3 straight first round knockouts end with a unanimous decision win. And you can explain away he needed all 15 minutes because it was, I think, clearly the best fighter that he's fought in his career with Dan Ige. His last 2 wins are against Sadiq Youssef and Dan Ige. Those are real legitimate fighters. So yes, this is a gigantic step up in competition for Lopez as he is going up against Brian Ortega, a former title challenger in this division. But I don't think it's a step up that is unwarranted. And I am really, really interested to see what he kind of brings. I feel like this is a chance to fully solidify him as one of the next ones coming in this division. And for Ortega, he had that status for a while, and it paid off for the most part. Like, he's getting title challenges and fighting in really big fights. He just happened to fight in the time of Max Holloway and Alex Volkanovski. But I think still showed that there's something there. He had lost 3 of his last 4 before he beat Yair Rodriguez in his last bout. But those 3 were against Rodriguez, Alex Volkanovski, and Max Holloway. I would suggest to you, most human beings on Earth are losing to those 3 fighters. And most fighters are going to lose to those 3 guys. So a loss in that stretch just means you are not in the top 2 or 3 in this division. The issue is Lopez might be. In terms of talent-wise. Like, he legitimately could be that guy. And so for Ortega, this is a fight to kind of keep your spot a little bit. Because we already had, like, okay, Yair, they've split now 1-1, but it does kind of feel Yair's maybe a little bit over him. You have Volka's ahead of him. You have Holloway is ahead of him. Topuria has kind of jumped the line over top of him. Well, not kind of, he's the fucking champion. But you've had these guys, and Ortega, who was at the top for a while, has just kind of ticked down a little bit each time he has fought. And now this is another guy who is looking to come and take that spot. If Ortega wants to have one more run at a championship, I'm not going to say it's a must win, because quite frankly, good looking dude, put him on a poster anytime, people are going to watch. So he has a marketability around him that helps. But in terms of legitimately being a title challenger and not just being 2 wins and a pretty face away from being a title challenger, but actually, like, talent-wise being there, I think you need this win. I think he desperately needs this win. And it is a really good kind of placement to see where is Lopez right now. And even a loss here doesn't mean that he's never going to be that guy. It just means that maybe there is a bit more seasoning and we didn't need to skip the on-ramp from between Ortega and Dan Ige. Irene Aldana taking on Norma Dumont. Aldana looking to build back up into a title fight. She lost to Amanda Nunes, but again, who wouldn't? She comes back with a win over Carol Rosa in her last bout. Her last 3 losses have come to Nunes, Holm, and Pennington. So similar to Ortega, that is no knock. Again, most people are losing to those fighters. It just means, again, you're not necessarily in that upper echelon. And I don't view Dumont as someone who is in there, but she's getting there. She's on a 4-fight winning streak. She just won her return to the bantamweight division against Germaine de Randamie. These are 2 top 10 fighters in the women's bantamweight division. And that is a division that feels very wide open right now. And so I think there is an opportunity for the winner of this fight, if they look impressive, either one of them. Aldana's 5, Dumont's 8. So admittedly, Dumont, it would take a little bit more. But if they look really impressive, I do think that the winner of this could have a title fight as their next fight, just given how wide open this division is right now. So a really, really important fight for a couple of fighters who are working their way up in this division right now. For Dumont for the first time, and for Aldana trying to do it again after getting a title opportunity against Amanda Nunes. And the last one, the last fighter I'm looking at, and sincere apologies that I'm about to butcher this name, but Yasmin God damn it, I practiced it before. Yargui. An interesting prospect. She's won 3 of 4 in the Ultimate Fighting Championship. Her only loss was a 20-second knockout, which, like, on the one hand, if I knocked someone out in 20 seconds, I would argue that nothing is more definitive than only needing 20 seconds to separate someone from their consciousness. That especially someone who's trying to not get knocked out, like is a someone who is trained specifically into not getting hit in the head so much that they get knocked out. So I would consider that a exclamation mark type of a victory. If I got knocked out in 20 seconds, I would say I was a lucky punch or kick or whatever. So you are trying to prove that is a fluke, but still, this is a 25-year-old who has 3 wins in the Ultimate Fighting Championship, 1 knockout loss, but she bounces back from that with a win. She has also before won the Combate Global 3-fight tournament, which happened in Miami. But it was an interesting tournament. It wasn't like back in the UFC tournament days where, oh wow, they fought for 45 minutes. They were 1-round fights. It was she won 1 fight by unanimous decision after 5 minutes. So when I say, oh wow, she won a 3-fight tournament in one night to win this tournament, let's not assume she fought for 45 minutes. I think she fought for 10 the entirety of the night. But still, a good fighter and an intriguing prospect here in this division. Going up against Ketlin Souza, former flyweight champion in Invicta. This could be an interesting moment for, we'll say, Yasmin, who I think has an opportunity here to really make a name for herself on a very interesting stage at the Sphere. Right now, she is slated in on the first portion of the prelims, which I don't know why they divide them into like, well, this is the Fight Pass prelims, and these are the other prelims, and now this is the main event, because it's all on the same streaming service now, right? But semantics. Anyway, those are 5 fighters that I'm really, really interested in when the UFC takes over the Sphere this weekend. But as I mentioned before, the real star of the weekend is the Sphere. So I'm just so excited to see how that plays out. One of the greats in the Ultimate Fighting Championship is, and the sport of MMA has called it a career. Yes, it's UFC 306 week, but pay-per-view times, I think it's a good time to just check around the sport and see what's going on. And the biggest news over the last little bit was Demetrious Johnson announcing his retirement from the sport of mixed martial arts, and truly goes down as one of the greatest of all time. Pound for pound, I have him as the number 7 fighter in the history of men's mixed martial arts. And I don't know, like it doesn't feel like he's a generation ago, but I don't know how much fight fans then, or fight fans now, appreciate how good this guy was. He was one of the most complete fighters we have ever seen. Like that, I think it was Ray Borg, where he gets the slam and the armbar. It's incredible. His hand speed, excellent. Like he was so much better than everyone else in his weight class. And if you take pound for pound as, if you just like, the opposite of shrunk. Why am I blanking on? But you boosted a couple guys up and you shrunk some other guys down, and all of a sudden those guys everyone's the same size. Demetrious Johnson is winning most fights. That's like, if that's your definition of pound for pound, is what would these all look like if everyone was the same size? Demetrious Johnson is beating most. Maybe not John Jones or George St. Pierre, but he's beating most. He was such an incredible talent. And I just feel like he never really got what he deserved in the UFC. And it's weird because the UFC would put him in some highlight spots, right? Like they would try to build up his popularity, putting him on Fox. And then he would main event some pay-per-views, but he would also be second from the top on a John Jones pay-per-view card or something like that. And I do feel like they gave him some opportunities to shine, but I also feel like there was enough against him from, maybe not necessarily, like, I don't think Dana shit-talked him that much, but Dana didn't really build up Demetrious Johnson in the way that he has built up guys like John Jones and all of those guys before. And so you can put him in these great spots, but then when you spend that week of them in that great spot being like, yeah, this guy really isn't that good, why are we... I don't know, like he's here, he's going to be a good fighter, but whatever. It doesn't get that connection with the audience. And it's weird. Like he seems like a very, very nice guy and has that outgoing personality and was such a dominant fighter. It's weird that it just didn't connect. And then he goes to ONE and they treat him like an absolute super duper duper star. But the legacy of Demetrious Johnson is one where you look at a guy who was just so much better than everyone in his weight class. And it never clicked with UFC fans. And it's weird. I don't know why, but it had. As far as other fight announcements go, there haven't been many. Out here in Alberta, there is obviously some excitement building for the UFC Fight Night card in Edmonton, and it now has a new main event this coming about 10 days ago, as Amir Albazi and Brandon Moreno are going to be on top of that card. So that means the Blanchfield Namajunas fight is going to be a 5-round co-main event as well. And so this is a really, really intriguing fight. Albazi is like knocking on the door for a championship opportunity. And he has put on a very good show over the last little while. 6 straight fights that he has won, has rocketed up the UFC rankings at 125 pounds. Now, a win here and he gets a title shot. No doubt in my mind, a win here. He gets an opportunity at the championship. And for Brandon Moreno, that's a belt he's held before. Now, he has to try to work his way back up to it. And so far, it hasn't gone great. He's lost back-to-back fights, and now to good fighters in Royval and Pantoja. But this is a chance to kind of knock down someone who has worked their way ahead of him in the rankings and work his own self back up to another championship opportunity. So a very, very intriguing fight coming up in Edmonton in November. UFC Noche, Riyadh season, which is weird, but still, from the Sphere, Las Vegas, Nevada. In the main event, Sean O'Malley defends his bantamweight championship against someone who has long danced around this opportunity, Merab Dvalishvili. There's another title fight on this card and some interesting pieces on the undercard. So let's go through it with our main card breakdown. First, it is Ronaldo Rodriguez taking on Odie Osborne in the flyweight division. Rodriguez is 25 years old, standing at 5'7", born in Veracruz, Mexico, training out of Prime Combat Academy. He is 16-2 for his career with 7 wins by knockout and another 5 by submission. Also one other little DQ win in there for you. Also 2 losses by decision. His last win coming against Dennis Bondar at UFC Fight Night in February of 2024. He won by 2nd round submission. That was his UFC debut and is also putting him on a 6-fight win streak with 4 finishes. His last loss came on Dana White's Contender Series, and he has been a pro since 2017. For Osborne, he is 32 years old, born in Kingston, Jamaica. At 5'7", he has a 73-inch reach, training at Black Cobra MMA. 12-7 for his career with 1 no contest. 5 wins by knockout, 4 wins by submission, 2 knockout losses, and 4 submission losses. His last fight was a submission loss against Rafael Filho at the Ultimate Fight Night in March of this year. That was a first-round submission loss. He has now lost 3 of his last 4 and has been finished in all of them. He's 4-5 in the Ultimate Fighting Championship, finished in all of his losses, and has finished 2 of his 4 wins. He has been a pro since 2015. I think Rodriguez is a bit of an interesting prospect at 125 pounds, and I think he continues that progression here. It just kind of feels done for Osborne. All of those finishes in a row, and now you go up against someone who 4 finishes in his last 6 bouts. So I am going Rodriguez in this fight to get the win. Then we have Daniel Zellhuber taking on Esteban Ribovics in the lightweight division. Zellhuber is 25 years old, born in Mexico City. At 6'1", he trains at Extreme Couture with a record of 15-1 with 7 wins by knockout, 3 by submission, and 1 decision loss. His last bout was at the Ultimate Fight Night card in February, where he picked up a unanimous decision win over Francisco Prado. It is a 3-fight win streak, all 3 by decision. He had a loss in his UFC debut, making him now 3-1 since joining the promotion in 2022. He got that contract by winning on Dana White's Contender Series in September of 2021, which was the fight that followed his last stoppage win in May of 2021 in Lux Fighting League. He had stoppage wins in 9 of his first 11 fights and has been a pro since 2016. He takes on Ribovics, who is 28 years old, born in Argentina. At 5'10", he trains at Killcliff FC. 13-1 for the career, 7 wins by knockout, another 5 by submission, his lone loss coming by way of decision. His last fight only lasted 37 seconds, and he won by knockout, beating Terrence McKinney at the Ultimate Fight Night card. That's back-to-back wins after his first career loss in his UFC debut at UFC 285. He had another finish, is another finish after a decision win, being his first. That came at UFC 290. He won on Dana White's Contender Series in a minute 30 back in August 2022 and has been a pro since 2015. This is another one where it's a bit of an intriguing one, but I feel like there is really something here with Ribovics to a point. Like, I don't think, well, future champion. But I do think that given the explosive nature of a lot of his wins, he has kind of eased it back a little bit, but is still winning by decision. That shows a lot of maturity. I do think Zellhuber is on a pretty good run here right now, but I do think Ribovics ends up getting the win. I talked about this fight earlier. That one, absolutely. Fight of the night possibility there, Deeds. 100%. When you look at a couple of guys who both have experience with finishes, both on some winning streaks, again, back-to-back wins for one, 3-fight win streak for the other, I think a really, really high potential for fight of the night, 100% on that one. This one could be as well. You have Brian Ortega taking on Diego Lopez in the featherweight division. Ortega, 33 years old, born in Los Angeles, California. He has, at 5'8", he has a 69-inch reach and trains at Gracie University. 60-3 with 1 no contest, 3 wins by knockout, 8 by submission. He's been stopped twice in his career, both by knockout, and lost 1 decision. He is coming off of a submission win over Yair Rodriguez at the Ultimate Fight Night card in February. It ended a 2-fight losing streak, and he had lost 3 of his last 4. But as we mentioned earlier in the week, those losses, Rodriguez, former title challenger. Volkanovski, like the second best featherweight in the history of the sport. Max Holloway, very good at punching people in the head. So a very good 3-4 losing run for him. He has wins over Rodriguez, as we mentioned, Korean Zombie, and Frankie Edgar, along with Cub Swanson. His win over Yair Rodriguez was his first stoppage win, though, since 2018, and his first submission win since 2017. He's 8-3 with 1 no contest in the Ultimate Fighting Championship. He's been with the company since 2014. A pro since 2010. He is a first-degree black belt under Rener Gracie. Lopez, 29 years old, 5'11", a 72-inch reach, giving him a 3-inch reach advantage over Ortega. That's going to be big in a second here. Born in Brazil, he resides in Mexico and trains at Lobo Gym MMA. 25-6 is the MMA career, 10 wins by knockout, 12 by submission. He has been stopped twice in his career and lost 4 decisions. His last fight was a decision win over Dan Ige at UFC 303. It's a 4-fight winning streak. The first this fight was the first one that lasted more than a minute 40. He has been tearing through guys on his way up to this point in the featherweight division. The reason, or one of the reasons he lost his last loss, it was his UFC debut against Movsar Evloev, who we have found to be very good, and he took it on 5 days' notice. So you can kind of explain that one away pretty easily. 4-1 in the UFC, been in the promotion since 2023, coming off of a loss in 2021 on Dana White's Contender Series. A pro since 2012, he is also a BJJ black belt. I think that reach is going to be very important for him in this fight. Brian Ortega's stand-up game has improved immensely over the years, but he is still, I view him anyway still, as someone who needs to kind of get his get down on the ground. I think Lopez, because also a BJJ black belt, and because he has this reach, he has this explosive striking ability, he has this reach advantage, and he is well-versed on the ground. It makes him a very dangerous fighter. Yes, this is the best fighter he has ever fought, no question about it. But knocking out Sadiq Yusuff in just over a minute, outpointing Dan Ige, proving that you aren't just a knockout guy, that you are someone who can put 3 rounds together, can put 15 minutes of quality fighting together, and getting that ring time and getting that experience. I think all of that leads to a very good performance here on Saturday night. I think we come out of Saturday, obviously we'll be talking about the 2 title fights, but we're going to be talking about another title fight, and that'll be the one that is up next, I think, for Diego Lopez. I think he puts on a show. I think that we have an opportunity here to, I don't want to say like, oh, the next big star in the UFC. He's 29. We'll see. But we have someone who I think is going to develop into a fan favorite. And so I think he uses that reach advantage that he has to be able to keep this fight standing. And I do think that you'll start to see him get a little bit more comfortable on the feet as it goes on and really start to land some of his power punches. For Ortega to not lose this, which I think you can all kind of see where I'm going with this pick. For Ortega to not lose, he is going to have to be, I think, a little bit more pressure on Diego Lopez, kind of like what John Jones talked about in his fight with Glover Teixeira. I'm sure there's a more recent example than that, but you know what I'm referring to. So he isn't able to use that long reach advantage. Once he can get inside, things start to open up for Ortega a little bit more, and it creates a few opportunities to create the situations where he would have the advantage in. I just think that's going to be tough for him to get into. I think the power of Lopez gets it, and so I think Diego Lopez ends up getting the victory. But this one also, Deeds, this one could also very well be your fight of the night. Co-main event, the first of two title fights on this card at the Sphere. First, it's Alexa Grasso taking on Valentina Shevchenko for the Women's Flyweight Championship. Grasso is 31 years old, at 5'5" and a 66 reach advantage. She's born in Guadalajara, Mexico, training at Lobo Gym. 16-3-1 for her career. 4 wins by knockout, 2 by submission. She has been stopped once by submission and has 2 decision losses. That draw came in her last fight against Valentina Shevchenko when they fought to a decision at the UFC Fight Night card on September 16th, 2023. So almost exactly 1 year ago. That helped her retain her title after winning it at UFC 285. She has a 6-fight unbeaten streak, 5-0-1 with 2 submission wins in there. Her losses have come to Carla Esparza, Tatiana Suarez, and Felice Herrig. So some very strong, capable fighters in there. Overall, 8-3-1 in the UFC, and she's been with the company since 2016. Before that, she went 4-0 in Invicta and has been a pro since 2012. Taking on one of the greatest to ever do it, Valentina Shevchenko, 36 years old. 5'5" with a 66.5 reach advantage. Born in the Soviet Union, she trains out of Tiger Muay Thai. 23-4-1 for her career with 8 wins by knockout, another 7 by submission. She has been stopped twice in her career, once by knockout and once by submission. Again, the last fight, the draw. That means it is now a 2-fight winless streak for Shevchenko after a 9-fight win streak. Her title loss to Grasso came after 7 successful title defenses. She has the most title wins in UFC women's flyweight division history. She has the most consecutive title defenses in UFC women's flyweight division history. She is the 2022 World MMA Women's Fighter of the Year. Her 2 losses, 2 of her 4 losses coming to Amanda Nunes, also lost to Grasso, and a loss to Liz Carmouche as well. 12-3-1 in the UFC. She's been with the company since 2015 and has been a pro since 2003. So it's been a long road for Valentina Shevchenko. These two have fought each other a lot. You get the submission win for Grasso, and then 5 rounds together back a year ago leads us now to this point. I do feel like this is one of those ones where Grasso's time has kind of come and she has an opportunity to get a win here. The thing that I just can't get out of my head is Valentina Shevchenko, not only a very dangerous fighter, she is also a very smart fighter. And she is someone who I think kind of downloads information a lot and uses that information very, very effectively. Most, like, the scorecards were split for that one. It wasn't we had one dissenting judge and it fucked everything up. You had one for Shevchenko, you had one for Grasso, and you had a tie. And when you looked at the media cards, 11 of them were for Grasso and 11 of them were for Shevchenko. It was as close can get. I just feel like if you give Valentina Shevchenko 35 minutes to figure you out, she's going to figure you out. And so that is why maybe that this is, because a lot of times in MMA, when you have a fighter and they are just on this run and that run stops for whatever reason, it's just done, right? Like we've seen that a ton of times before where it just kind of, they just can't get that fire back for whatever reason. Shevchenko, though, has had to deal with that kind of adversity before. She lost to Grasso and then had a draw with her in their last bout, but also she lost to Amanda Nunes when she was on her come up, and this was like, okay, this is a huge fight. She loses that bout, and then she's able to get that run started again and work her way into being one of the great talents of this era of women's mixed martial arts. I said earlier this week, it is, from a what does she do next standpoint, so much more intriguing if Shevchenko loses, but the more I've been going over this one, the more I just don't think she does. I think Valentina Shevchenko gets the win here at UFC Noche, UFC 306. That brings us to the main event of the evening. For the men's bantamweight championship, Sean O'Malley defends against Merab Dvalishvili. O'Malley is 29 years old, born in Helena, Montana. At 5'11", he trains out of the MMA lab with a 72-inch reach. He is 18-1 with 1 no contest for his career, 12 wins by knockout, 1 submission win, and he has been knocked out once in his career. His last fight was a unanimous decision win over Marlon Vera at UFC 299, the first defense of his bantamweight championship, and he set a record in that bout with the most significant strikes landed in UFC bantamweight title history. His only loss came to Marlon Vera at UFC 252, so he has now taken that loss, not off the record, that it stays there for forever, but he got that, he gets his win back. So that was big for him to do that. Just his 3rd decision win in the UFC. He's undefeated in his last 7, 6-0 with 1 no contest. He has been in the UFC now since 2017. It's wild. He's been in the promotion 7 years now, man. 10-1 in the UFC with 1 no contest, an alumni of Dana White's Contender Series, and a pro since 2015. Dvalishvili, 33 years old, 5'6", born in Georgia. No, not the state, the country. He trains at Serra Longo Fight Team, 17-4, with 3 wins by knockout, 1 by submission, and 1 submission loss. His last fight, a unanimous decision win against Henry Cejudo at UFC 298. That puts an exclamation mark on a 10-fight win streak that leads him to a title opportunity here tonight. Maybe he would have got there sooner, but 9 of those wins were by decision. We talked earlier in the week about why he didn't get this opportunity earlier, because his boy at Serra Longo, Aljamain Sterling, was locked in a trilogy with Petr Yan to get the title opportunity. Dvalishvili has wins over Yan, Aldo, Marlon Moraes, Corey Stamen, and John Dodson. He's been with the promotion since 2017. He lost his first 2 fights in the UFC. And he's now 10-2, which follows, actually, the story of his career. He went 1-2 as a pro to start when he started off in 2014 and is now 17-4. So we talk about bouncing back from adversity. This guy bounces back from adversity. This one is about as close as we get in modern MMA to striker versus wrestler, because it's not as simplistic as it was back if this was UFC 79, where like the striker could only strike and the wrestler could only wrestle. That's not how this is anymore. Dvalishvili is a good striker, and Sean O'Malley is an excellent grappler if it gets down into that level. So it's a very intriguing fight for that reason. I feel like O'Malley's range is going to be, again, very important in this bout. He is the taller fighter by 5 inches. I didn't get Merab's reach, but I can't imagine that it's a whole lot close to 72. And so this is, again, O'Malley, he has that length, he has that power. It's actually very similar to the Lopez strategy against Brian Ortega, where if he can kind of just keep him at range, this is going to be a good fight for him. Merab has to get this fight inside. He has to make this fight look ugly. He has to get the takedowns, and he has to be able to really wear on Sean O'Malley that way. The problem is, I think O'Malley is a skilled enough grappler that when this fight does go to the mat, he is still going to be there, and maybe he doesn't threaten off of his back as much, because I do think that that's something that really has changed in MMA over the last 5-10 years, is that like the amount of guys who you just like, you don't want to go to the ground at all with them because they are so much better off their back than you are in top control. There's like 3 of those guys. O'Malley isn't that dude, but he's going to at least be good enough that he is going to be able to limit the offensive opportunities that Merab would have in this fight. And so I love Merab as a fighter, and I am so interested to see how this fight plays out on Saturday and the interesting chess match, because it does, and this is something I get caught with a lot, it does feel simplistic to just be like, oh, O'Malley's the better stand-up fighter, so that means Merab can't do any stand-up. That's not the case. Merab is a very good stand-up fighter. It's just in this fight, it would behoove him to not be and to take this fight to the ground. But then when he takes the fight to the ground, because that's where he wanted it to be, that doesn't mean O'Malley's fucked either. Both guys are very, very close in the areas where the other has the advantage, that it makes it a very interesting fight. I just feel like that there's a couple more tools in the toolbox for O'Malley to be able to get this done, and I think the power that he has in the hands as well is going to be able to give him the edge. And so I think O'Malley wins this one. I think it is probably a razor close decision, but I think Sean O'Malley ends up getting it done in the main event. That is it for the UFC breakdown.